Welcome to Movie Club, where we watch movies new and old, and we analyze them like a local book club.
Our goal here is to talk about movies that we love and hate, and find out why you love and hate them along with us. So please add to the discussion by putting something in the comments.
Down below. My name's Josh. I'm your average moviegoer.
I'm Tyler, a recent graduate from film school.
LCM.
We don't always agree about movies.
But we do love talking about them and finding out what we like and dislike about them. And maybe arguing about those likes and dislikes.
A little bit.
Just un poquito.
So today we watched Vertigo, which was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and stars James Stewart and Kim Novak.
Our discussion will definitely ruin the movie for you, so please make sure that you find a way to go see it, or if you don't care, that's fine too. But just a heads up, hashtag spoiler alert.
Okay, so my first question, what do you think of the Vertigo effect, and do you have any idea how they did it?
Oh, like in the editing?
Well, it's not editing.
It's not?
No, it's camera work. It's all physical, practical effects.
I think that's pretty cool. I liked it. There were several parts. That's the note that I just made, was about the Vertigo. I found myself wishing that there were more Vertigo moments.
Like in the sense that part where he looks down and
to give you the feel that it was an actual issue. But there weren't very many points throughout the movie where he could have had those moments. And I also feel like if there were more, the Vertigo parts that were there would have contributed less.
Right, yeah, for sure.
I feel like they really advanced the plot. And I thought it was pretty... I mean, for the movie in general, I think it was really done well.
How do you think it would have been done physically?
I would have, zoom in, zoom out.
Well, close. So the way they do it is they put the camera on a dolly. They move the dolly in towards what they're filming while zooming out.
Oh, that's cool.
So one of the interesting things about cameras is normally when you're filming somebody's face, you want to have a tight lens, like an 80mm lens or something, because there's less distortion on somebody's face. Say you were using a GoPro lens where it's like that fisheye situation. Yeah. Your face is all distorted and kind of blown out. You may not notice it unless you have two side by side. It's really when the camera is super close to your face, that's when it really distorts it.
That is interesting.
So if you notice, the reason it's able to be that way is because they took the tight part of the lens and then zoomed out, so it distorts everything while the camera's physically moving closer. So that's how you get that effect.
I thought it was pretty very interesting. Pretty very interesting.
It's it seems really simple, but it's actually very difficult to get done, right?
Really? That makes sense.
Because you have to make sure that you have the right kind of focus, too. Because when you're moving the camera and changing the focal length, you're changing the focus point in two different things drastically.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I thought the whole movie was really well done in general, just for its time. And the effects were pretty interesting. I like the color playing that they did. It was pretty great. My question for you is significantly more lame than your question.
That's okay. We can't all be geniuses.
I'll start with this one. The first question I'll start with is there a character that you identify with?
A character that I identify with?
Yes. And if so, why?
I guess the idea is you're supposed to identify with Johnny, so that's kind of what I'm going towards.
I felt the same way.
I think it's really because you're supposed to think about his issues as a metaphor for just issues in general.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard.
I feel like my answer is terrible to this question.
No. I think it's kind of hard for anyone to identify with anyone but Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, because every other character is so unreal.
Yeah, it feels it's definitely like
Midge and
Midge, that's my main.
Everybody else. Okay, so something that I thought was weird about the way they shot the movie and just story in general. I'd really like to think that I would have noticed that car following me the entire day.
Yes, that was my note throughout the entire movie. I can't tell you. He was
so close to her the whole time.
How did this bitch not know? I was like, please let this whole movie be about possession. I was like, the second that guy was like, she's possessed, I'm like, yes, let her be possessed. Never having seen the movie, just knowing of the movie, I had no idea what it was about. I mean, clearly Vertigo was an issue.
I didn't actually ask the question, I guess.
No, you
didn't. With how close he was and everything, do you think that was part of the story, that he was so obvious and for some reason she didn't notice, or do you think that it was just a mistake that was made because they didn't
I don't think there's any mistake made. I think that knowing the role that Judy was playing as Madeline, You were warned. She wouldn't have even cared. He could have been like riding her ass the entire time, and she would have like, oh, right. You know, like
right. Yeah, I'm possessed. I don't know you're there just because
yeah,
I'm possessed.
And that's what led me to believe. I was like, she's like seriously possessed. Like, I would imagine that Carlotta was older, and that had a whole other connotation. Like, I was convinced that she was possessed for a little bit there, and I was like, fucking Carlotta, man, she's gonna take everybody out. But I feel like her job was to literally lead him to the point that they got in the end, where the wife was thrown off the roof.
Right.
You were warned. Which wasn't actually the end either. There were several points in the movie and the random sidebar, that could have been the end of the movie, and it would have been fine. I like the way they clinched it all in the end.
Yeah, there's quite a few points, especially if you don't realize, especially because it feels like a really long movie.
It does.
It feels like
in the
3
beginning,
hours, even though
like that last hour, I was like,
right.
Give me more.
There's so many points where it's just kind of like, okay, it's finally. Oh, there's more. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I guess we're going on.
That's why, like, you saw me moving the mouse every now and then. I'm like, come on.
Once it's over, it's like finally worth it.
Yeah, no, 100% accurate. Yeah, like towards the end, my notes there was no rhyme or reason to any of my notes.
I can totally understand why it seems to have surpassed Citizen Kane as being considered the greatest film of all time. You've never seen Citizen Kane? Okay, I guess we'll have to add that to this. You're gonna hate that movie.
James Stewart. I was totally buying his brand of fucking crazy. For all of them, I think the roles were played very well. Midge, she was so sweet and innocent, and I remember making a note that I liking her relationship with Johnny.
Okay, so that adds to something that I wanted to bring up to you. Another question that I had.
Okay.
Really, what did you think of Midge? Because
I fucking loved Midge. I think Midge was every bit of a woman in the 50s. She was submissive when she needed to be, but she was an asshole when she needed to be. Her crazy, I would say, so in terms of crazy levels, Midge in the beginning was Johnny 0 crazy. That moment we see here in the car, she was like a 4. So that was Midge crazy at the time. Right. But I feel like at the end, Johnny crazy was the 11, or the 12, dare I say, because he was so broken that, like, he just couldn't not be crazy. And
you see, he was made to be crazy, whereas all these other people are
just baseline crazy. So I think when you have, like, that thrust into crazy, it just, like, propels you off the charts.
Right.
Midge crazy could have also been on par with that. Her baseline crazy, like, when she was having her crazy meltdown.
Right. She's set up as kind of being crazy to begin with.
Yes.
Like, right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Just the way they filmed her, the way that they lit her face. They filmed her from high down, and she's got the lines from her glasses, like, just under her eyes, and she's like...
Mm-hmm. Very, like, shiny glasses, looking into the camera.
Right. She seems so, like, sweet and normal and everything, but for some reason, the way they filmed her,
sinister.
She's, like, sinister and kind of, like, evil seeming. It's so weird.
It was
kind of strange. But, like, I love it.
Oh, yeah. I made that note several times. I was like, I am buying all of Midge's crazy. I want to find one of the notes that I made. Also, Midge is nuts, and I think I love it. That was one. I don't know. There's just so, like, I really enjoyed Midge. I think she's probably my favorite character, if I had to pick one. And the end crazy. Oh, you deserve this, but what can we do to help him? Like,
right.
Fuck you, but I love you. Like,
right. When you think about that, he does point out that he tried to engage. He asked her to marry him.
And she broke it off.
But now she's angry at him because he's with somebody else.
Can I say that?
Ouch.
I mean, not for nothing. I'm not for nothing. This is coming from me as a woman, too. Like, I've had those moments where I'm like, fuck you, I hate you, I love you. Or, like, there's been times, and you know this as a friend of mine, you know, when Logan knows this, it's like, there's times when I'm like, oh, maybe we should plan this, you know, a couple weeks in advance. And then the time gets there when we planned it, and I was like, oh, no, you should have let me know, like, yesterday.
We were just talking about that this morning.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm not coming for you ladies, because I'm there too. If you were working on the movie today, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes. So the first thing I would do differently is actually change some of the cinematography.
Yeah?
Like the camera work. Right.
Which one?
I know, right? That's very surprising.
It is.
But it's things that I bet you probably didn't even notice at all.
I would say you're 100% accurate because I'm like, in terms of like the Vertigo parts, like I really enjoyed that.
No, that needs to stay more or less the way it is. There were a couple points that I felt the clips could have been longer, but that's probably more of like an editing thing anyway. But really what I'm getting at is a technical problem that I had with exposure throughout quite a few points in the movie. Where it seems like what they did was they wanted it to be at night, but they were shooting bright daylight at noon. So instead of waiting until later in the day or lighting for nighttime, they lowered the exposure so that it would seem darker, but really just makes it really hard to see.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, well, there's one point when I like blinked or looked away and I looked back at the TV and I'm like...
You almost think there's something wrong with your TV, but there isn't, because I've watched this movie numerous times, and so many different TVs, many different DVD versions,
4K,
streaming,
1080p, 10K.
I've seen like a remastered copy of it versus like the streaming and like a really, really old copy of it on DVD, and it's just like that in those exact same scenes. I
didn't put it on the makers of the film. I really wanted to go up and like knock on the screen, like, "Hey, girl, what's up?"
Right, exactly. Okay, so a perfect example of that is when they're talking to the bookstore guy.
Okay.
Like, and I was really disappointed about it because that set looks so beautiful. Like, there's so much detail in there, and I'm sure there's so much color and everything. But they chose to essentially underexpose it for what I'm assuming was meant to be like a later evening effect or something like that, and it just destroys all that color. It's just not there, and it's really unfortunate considering how much bright, vibrant color there is throughout the entire movie. That even continued to them going out into the street with this low exposure, because once they left and that scene was over with, like with talking to him and them talking on the street in front of the store, it was late evening, just actually late evening. Yeah,
at the time, and I don't know if you know this, you may, was there a way for them to fix it in editing?
There really isn't even a way to do that now, unless you were
really?
Yeah, I mean, because it's an exposure issue. Like, if you were to underexpose something, or overexpose something, you're not getting all of the information in the film.
Without underexposing, like if they were to film it regularly, is there a way to achieve the effect of Twilight?
In a studio with lighting, yeah. I don't know if they actually shot in a studio though. I mean, no matter what, like they could have done that. I mean, it was a big budget movie for the time too. They should have just shot it late evening. Maybe they didn't know that they were gonna, maybe it was something like that it could have been an editing thing too. Like, they could have filmed it properly and exposed it properly with cinematography, but then realized when they were editing that they wanted to put it right up against this other late evening scene, which then they would have wanted to try and change in post to make it, and maybe they brought the exposure down in post or something, and that's why that happened. But I just find it to be really unfortunate. And then there was something else that I was thinking about changing as far as like story, actually, a little bit. I'd watched it with a few times in classes, and with you even, I realized the same thing. Nobody can really seem to keep characters' names straight in this movie. Like, at all. Well,
it's not that I couldn't do that, it's that I wasn't paying close enough attention to in the beginning.
Right, but that's not even the point. Who the hell is Scotty? Like, there's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when I first watched this movie, I was like, wait, I thought his name was Johnny. And then I'm like, wait, now he's Scotty. Oh, okay. And then you get like halfway through the movie and he actually says, oh, but my acquaintances call me Scotty. Really? Can't you just pick a stick? And where does Johnny turn into Scotty?
Yeah.
Like, no. I mean, I understood like Johnny-O. Like,
is it like a thing for the time?
I don't know. Okay, so this isn't necessarily about like the movie, but just about like culture, I guess.
Okay.
I think it really says something about the time that this was filmed, and like the fact that this wasn't a big deal back then to have been in a movie. How like men just like boss women around kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like particularly at the end when they're in the department store and he's buying her the clothes and stuff, and he's just like...
And everyone seems to just go along with it.
Right. The women in the department store seem to be more bothered by the fact that like he wants something that they don't have, rather than how he's being like super bossy and
mistreating all of them.
Right, and mistreating
and she was like noticeably distraught, like
very, very upset, like she was being abused.
Yeah,
and
that moment like, definitely did seem like that.
Right. But, and it was so like the question is like noticing that, how would that play in a movie today if we went and watched
I think everyone
Vertigo
would
right now? Shit. Right, but would people actually lose their shit because it's being mistreated, or would they see it in the sense of, well, he was really screwed over. He wasn't like that at the beginning of the movie. He was the only one, if you notice too, at the beginning of the movie that kind of was equal. Like, he didn't look down towards women. But now that he's gone a little crazy like everybody else.
That's true. But I think, are you asking if it was played today, how people would react to it? Yeah. I feel like if it was made today, if the exact same thing was made, like if they took that and just made it modern, like visually, as opposed to the whole time frame, I feel like people would lose their shit. I think a lot of people would go crazy. They'd go crazy. That's the theme of the movie. It's crazy.
I think I have to agree with that too. Like, it's not right.
It would be offended this, women's rights that, and it's like, this is.
But would it end up being played as like, oh well, this is just part of the story. This is just part of this scenario, or would it be played as just like, no, this just isn't right? Because I mean, things like that do happen in movies today, but as if it was just like, oh, that's just how people treat women, as opposed to
like how it was in the time.
I think what reaction do you?
I think there would be a fair amount of both, to be honest with you. But I feel like for the most part, the overall reaction, if I had to give it one word, would be outrage. He definitely did kind of like tap into the authority that men had in the 50s, and that's one of the notes that I made was that Madeline, when she was Madeline, she had a lot of freedom for a woman in the 50s.
Right.
And maybe what I perceive of the 50s is completely off, but this is probably going to sound wrong too, but whatever. Like, I was expecting to see more of her in the kitchen than more of her at the river, throwing petals into the river. But you got
to remember, she's part of an extremely wealthy family. She has no job.
That's true.
And then there is also the fact that they're trying to set him up. So maybe she just seems like she has free time, whereas the real person maybe doesn't.
That's true. And that's not something that I thought about in the beginning. For the first half of that movie, you didn't know any of this information. I feel like the first half was like the setup, and the first half was over an hour.
Right.
But then, like, the development of all that information that they gave you is really where they, like, made it great. If you could ask the screenwriter one question, what would the question be? It doesn't have to be the screenwriter. It could be the editor. It could be the producer. It could be the director.
Well, if I was asking editor or director a question, it would be about the exposure situation, to be honest. In a way, I'd want to know how they decided to come up with the Vertigo effect. What made them realize it? Knowing how it works technically now, after it's been done a million times and all that stuff, it makes so much sense, but just deciding to use that effect and knowing how to use it, I wonder how they came up with that. It reminds me of a situation to reference another movie, actually, of The Graduate. Have you seen that yet? Okay, so I guess we're gonna add that. It's also like a huge, like, critically acclaimed type of movie. One of my friends recently, when we were watching it for a class, he came up with this concept that nothing in the movie is like actually happening. When you listen to the story that somebody tells you on trial, say, the person who's guilty is telling you like a slightly different version of it that makes the other person maybe seem bad, like they wanted something, or they wanted this to happen, kind of a thing, right? In The Graduate, there's this perspective of all these things that are happening to him just seem a little too bizarre to be like the normal world. Now, is that because it's suspension of disbelief for a film, or is it because you're getting this perspective from somebody who's trying to reason with what he did in his life and find ways to blame other people for his choices and how weird and screwed up things were for him?
Well, no, he had his brand of crazy too.
That was at the end when he was driven to be crazy.
That's true.
By all the crazy.
I mean, not for nothing, I would have been driven crazy too.
Right.
But I guess that's the purpose. But is that it though? Like, is it told from his perspective, or is it just the main character in a story that someone else is trying to tell?
I think that's where it comes into the viewer's decision making. I don't think that was necessarily Alfred Hitchcock's idea when he made this movie, but I definitely think that it's a valid point as a viewer of art, because art is what you make of it. It can definitely have that very interesting effect to it, like just another way of looking at it, you know.
What was your favorite part of the movie?
There are a lot of parts that I find really drawn out and like almost too long. I think that there's quite a bit of points that maybe certain things probably could have been taken out and whatnot. But the question is, as far as like what would be my favorite, I don't know. It's really hard to say, because there's snippets of things that I consider my favorite throughout the entire movie, but it's not because of the story or anything like that at all, actually. It's because I just love the shots in them and I love the color.
That's the film aspect. I think if I had to pick, I think I would pick Midge. Just like her development from start to finish. Like, she's not in the movie that much. Part of the reason why I think I relate to this, and this isn't so gay, when I was in high school, we did Grease. And I was nothing but an extra except for the hand jive. I sang the hand jive. But my extra character developed through the movie, kind of like Sandy. He started out as a really big dweeb and then ended up as a greaser. That's kind of the change that Midge takes. I wouldn't even say sinister is the right word because it's very subtle.
I don't think it's that subtle.
I thought it was subtle because I there was a little bit of off-put, but there wasn't a lot.
There's a lot of off-put for me. Like she really puts me off.
Yeah. I wasn't. I don't think I didn't really get. I did get some kind of like something's wrong here, but like for the most part, I was comforted by like their relationship. And then just watching her tailspin when she's clearly, I wouldn't say obsessed in the beginning, but she's still in love with him in the beginning. And then that moment in the car, she just had that crazy moment, and it really didn't. The only thing it did for the movie is give her that character development because she doesn't do it much throughout the rest of the movie. And then the next time you see her, she's like normal.
Right.
But that just adds to how crazy she fucking is. I just really loved her development. That would be my favorite part of the whole thing. Yeah. That's the theme. Like straight up schizophrenia. That's what I thought. I was like, if she's not possessed, she's schizophrenic.
Right.
And then I was like, they all just got fucking psychological disorders. This is what it was like in the 50s before Xanax.
Well, I'd also like to point out that his next film was Psycho.
Oh, I did not know that. That's
Alfred
pretty
Hitchcock's
interesting.
next movie was Psycho. At least I think
so he was getting ready.
Oh no, it wasn't the next one. I'm sorry. His next film was North by Northwest, then Start Time, then Psycho, but it was only a 2-year difference.
Okay, so he's
in release time. So yeah, he was getting there.
Here is one of my favorite comments of the whole thing. The actress. I became a really big fan of the actress.
Which actress?
The woman who played Madeline and Judy.
Okay.
And it started with, and it was very Marilyn Monroe, I would say, but the comment, it reads as follows. Her flirt game is lit. Like she flirts with her whole body. #jelly. I lied. She's not flirting. She's smutting it up. Because she just oozed sensuality when she was Madeline. The pouty lips, furrowed brow, and then her movements. Her face said vulgar things in the 50s way.
Right. And
then her body read nonchalance. And I thought that was... you could just see it, the coupling of the face come fuck me and body's like, oh, I'm chill. That was the sensual part. I think the way she kind of it was just dripping from her everywhere. Sensuality, I think. I think that I would probably... No, I wouldn't say. I have a lot of favorites, but I remember that being a shining moment when the movie first began.
Well, that's all we have for today. We hope you enjoyed our second episode of Movie Club, and we hope to see you next time.
We intend to upload a new video every other Friday until we find our own rhythm. And then maybe we can start uploading once per week, hopefully. If not even more frequent than that.
So if you enjoyed your time with us, please subscribe to, and share our videos. And don't forget to leave us a comment with a video you'd like to watch in the future, or a movie you'd like to watch in the future.
Thanks for watching Movie Club, and be sure to check us out in 2 weeks when we watch Adam Wingard's Death Note.